Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today I am looking at this piece here. Now I'm on the hunt for a blue crystal opal, but it has to be from Lightning Ridge, and this is the best one I could find while digging through my collection. I'm trying to put together a bunch of videos on material that is more often associated with a certain field, like this stuff you can find in Cooperpedia a lot, but I want to show how each of these fields across the country and even overseas, they share a lot of traits, and a lot of them can show the same kind of material, and it can be pretty tricky to tell where they're from unless you know the person that dug it out of the ground. So this came from a parcel from Jared, running one of the biggest and best opal Facebook groups, especially when it comes to Australian opal. So if you're ever in need for any opal, that's a very good place to check. There's always some really good sales up there. Not just from him, but from many of the others. Now this piece in particular has got a little bit of sand. You can see a little bit of dispersed opal there flashing through the sand as well. But it's this fairly thick bar that I'm interested in. It's a pretty dark crystal, and we're just gonna trim off the top here, have a look at it. Hopefully the sand clears out. The part that I'm worried about is this corner right here. So if I just get a standard torch and shine it through, it doesn't come up too great on camera, but I can see that there are a couple spots where sand might be going all the way through. Hopefully not. I've got a little bit of gap here and there that shows that it's not all the way through, but you're never 100% sure, so we're going to have to trim it back and see what we get. At least the entire external bar is exposed here and we can see where it's running. The reason I've picked that as the top is because there's a much thicker bar of potch just underneath here, but it does peter away as well and turns into sand here, so hopefully we can get a pretty decent stone out of it. I really need a good example of some blue crystal from Lightning Ridge. So let's trim it up and see what we get. Alright, so you can see here I'm using the blue sintered diamond. I don't do this often, but the 120 grit sintered diamond was chosen for a very specific reason. This is Lightning Ridge opal, and this is a little bit of the Lightning Ridge mud. It's a very gummy kind of mud, so you need a burr that's coarse enough to get through it without just gunking up a lot, even though this one still will, but you also want one that's going to pull up just short of the opal. And because you can't see through the sand and the mud, you have to do it by feel a lot of the time. And the 120 grit is my favorite for this. It will never overshoot. You can feel very strongly the transition from the sand to the opal. And with it being crystal opal, you've got to be especially careful because any small chip could be hugely damaging to be able to get rid of. Especially if you're going to cab something. If you're going to end up cabbing it, like if this sand worked out really well and I wanted to cab it, I would have to then really work hard to get rid of any kind of chippage. And you will chip with a 120, but it will take a lot more effort. So you can see here I'm really just nose down drilling into it, cutting what looks like a channel, but you can see the sand is still continuing. As soon as that sand is cleared through, I'll immediately stop, and I can only do that because I can feel it with the 120. The 80 grit will a lot of the time just grind way too far. You can still feel the transition, but by the time you've felt it, you've actually already done a lot of damage. So yeah, 120 grit is really good for that. I could use the 600 as well, but it just gets too gummy. It just gets too gunked up and you have to keep cleaning the burr constantly. Here I'm more worried about just cleaning the opal in between just to eyeball what I'm feeling and just confirming that what I'm feeling is correct. But honestly, you could almost get rid of this sand blindfolded with the 120, it's that easy. And then once that's all gone, you can see I'm sweeping over the rest of the surface. We are looking at it, looking at the bar, looking at how deep we've had to go to get rid of this sand. And I'm just trimming up the edges because 1, I'm going to have to do that anyway. 2, I want to see what's left. And that just gives me a little bit of vision into it. But I am getting way deeper over this side than I thought, and I'm already thinking I might have to do a slice down that valley and maybe end up with 2 stones, but it gets even worse than that because as you can see there's quite a lot of potch in the face still. So all across the face there's still a fair bit of potch. It's kind of that spiderwebby potch. Now the bar is really thick, so I'm thinking at this point I can still get through it. I'll use the 120 grit and I'll really push down and try to clear through all of that because you can see the colour's just peeking through, but there's still a lot of potch there. Checking out the bar thickness and thinking to myself, I've still got a pretty good chance, but I'm not going to do it with the 120. I have to go to the 600 at this point. You just can't risk it. Once you're starting to feel a little uncomfortable, just drop down to the 600. It slows down the process a bit, but not by a lot, and it will save you a lot of tears in the future. And this is where I can feel pretty free to just grind away. And we're grinding until we're happy, so we can't leave this much potch in the face. That's never going to work out, so have to hit it hard. Can't go over to the Nova points quite yet. The resin burrs will be way too gentle. We've still got a lot of material to remove. And I'm also just tidying up the edges, just making sure that we've got no sharp bits. Every time I'm moving the stone around between my fingers, I'm just constantly feeling for any kind of jagged parts or sharp bits, and then I'm hitting them with the 600. It will very rarely cause any kind of chipping, especially if you've worn in your 600 a bit, or you've hit it with the aluminium oxide dressing stick just to prepare it. If there's anything sticking out of it, yeah, you might have problems, but that's very rare. And then the other thing I'm going to do with the 600 is just quickly tidy the back. I'm not going to do anything too special with it. You can see this isn't even sped up footage, that's how quickly I'm spinning it around. And that's just so that I can flatten it out a bit. And then I'm just having a look at it, having a look at what's left and just reassessing. It's always good halfway through a cut to just reassess what you're doing, make sure you're all good, on track, and you've got a plan going forwards. Here I'm starting to get a little bit sad. I'm seeing that potch is still there, especially in the thin points. And I'm also noticing that there is a crack in this stone. So potch, sand, cracks, and it's actually going to get worse from there. But we'll see that in just a minute. For now, I'm still thinking I've got a lot of bar on this edge. I might be able to salvage a stone out of it. So I'm doing what I do when I'm really being careful. You won't see this too often. Even with the 600, sometimes I do this sweeping motion across the face. And yeah, at this point I'm looking at it going, how much more can I get rid of? I'll keep trying. But at that point I saw how deep this crack is going into the stone, and that was the main thing that was causing me pain. Let's have a look at the final stone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've absolutely bombed out on this one, or at least I have. I mean, this stone looks so good from the side, but it's been very deceptive, and we've got all three of the worst enemies we can come across. So we've got a crack right here. It goes a long way into the face, not all the way into the back, but it does penetrate right through the stone, which means it's going to be a problem. And because it's a crystal stone, any inclusion you're going to see very clearly, and you can see we've got this plume of potch that comes all up through the face. We've also got a bit of sand, which is not helping the matter out. And not only that, but for Lightning Ridge, it's really pulled off a Minterby where it looks really nice from the side of the bar, and then from the face, it just isn't quite there. There's a random patch of red that comes up in the bottom corner, which is, I don't know, consolation prize, but all in all, it's not what I was looking for. But at least it's an example of a stone that came from Lightning Ridge and wants to be Minterby and sandshot, cracked, and potchy. So, what do you know? What a win. I'm due for a bad stone. I've had a very good run with a lot of Cooper Pedy material, so switching over to Lightning Ridge Crystal was always going to be a bit of an issue, I think. I just really wanted, even with the crack, even with the sand, even with the potchiness, if I just got a lot of this colour that you can see from the side here into the face, it would be much better. Now the bar is still fairly thick here, and I could keep going into it, but it really isn't going to pop. The only other thing I can try to do is, one, just snap it at this crack, which I might just do on camera, because why not? We might as well make it interesting. But I could do a little bit more cutting and turn this into a doublet. Let's see if this crack will actually crack. I think it'll be too strong. Yeah, it'll be too strong. I'll have to go thinner to be able to get that one to pop. So it's still got some structural integrity, but a crack's a crack. You can see it, and it's definitely going to compromise the stone. So there is a chance that I just break that part off, see what I'm left with, grind it back so that we can try to get through the last of this potchy stuff, but I don't think it's going to happen. If you look from the side, you can see it still goes in quite a way, and then we're straight through the crystal color at that point. I've left a little bit of potch on the back, but removed most of the sand. This also highlights that crack. Yeah, it's a bit of a failed stone, but who knows, I might be able to doublet it and try to bring back some of this color, but it's a very directional stone as well. So directionality, sand, potch, crack. It is the full gambit of nightmares, which I suppose just happens every now and then. Cut half a dozen stones and you could be left real sad, but what we've got to do is cut 1,000 stones and end up with the couple dozen real good ones, especially with beginner material. And that's how you can enjoy yourself, but you are always going to come across some of these. The good thing is that it took about 30 minutes for me to work out that this one was a pretty failed piece. Not too bad, and in terms of what I wanted it for, it should be okay. It's a okay example. I'm still going to go rummaging through and try to find a blue crystal somewhere in my Lightning Ridge collection. But otherwise I might just have to go online and just hunt in particular for one single piece of rough. Much easier than buying beginner's parcels and trying to look through those for the stone that you want. So yeah, very unfortunate. I reckon I'll bring this one back as an experimental stone just to show you a bit of doubleting stuff. Even when a stone fails, there's always something you can do with it, or at least most of the time. And this is one of those cases, so you'll probably see it back. But the best cure for this is to drop it and move on.